Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's Monday. We're back at the Ritz for a delicious cup of tea, and I do hope you all had a really lovely weekend. I can't believe that we're going into our seventh week, but we are, and I guess quite a lot has happened in the last 6 weeks or so, which I've tried to reflect within these videos, and that's really what I want to do today because of a post that was put onto Facebook about 3 or 4 days ago by somebody called Helen. I'm going to read it out, what she wrote, because I think it's very interesting, and it provoked over 100 comments from all the other women joining in with their thoughts and feelings about what Helen says in this. She said, "Just wondering. I've read posts on other forums where women mention going somewhere when it's safe. Since we're not likely to have a vaccine for a long time and so many numbers are thrown about, has anyone thought about what safe would be? When would it be safe for you to go outside, to shop, to go to the library, to have lunch with friends, have a book club discussion, go to the theatre? Or are all those things gone in the interest of public safety? As the hand of government pushes me down further and further, at some point, don't know when, I'll have to get up and shout, 'Enough!' The women on this forum are so lovely and supportive. I thought it was safe to broach this subject in a non-judgmental way. Many thanks." So Helen, thank you for raising that. I think it's a very, very, very interesting post because we've been through different phases with this situation, and I want to reflect on that now and perhaps try and answer the question as I see it to what Helen is saying there. You know, when am I going to shout enough? I'm going to make some judgments of my own, and I think that that's basically what we're ultimately going to have to do. So how have we come to where we are? Well, the first thing to say is that there was this period before we went into lockdown, and I think that that has informed, that 3-4 weeks has informed an awful lot of what has happened in the last 6 weeks, by which I mean there were some terrible, terrible, frightening images coming out of Italy at that time. Their health service was overwhelmed. There were as a tide of very sick people. A lot of them were old and frail already, but they are seared on my brain, those images. And I kept thinking during that time, oh my goodness me, if that's what's happening in Italy, that has quite a sophisticated healthcare system, what on earth is going to happen over here? And I really got, during that period, the sense that the NHS might be very vulnerable to a similar kind of collapse if there was a tsunami of cases as there was in Italy. I think the other thing during that period, which again is still impacting on us, is that this virus is so completely variable from you don't know you've got it in some people to killing others and everything in between. So that's very, very difficult for us to cope with because we don't know, we still don't know, we have no idea how on an individual level we are likely to respond if we actually get the virus. The other thing that I think was disturbing in that period before lockdown was the way that older people were suddenly being singled out and lumped together. So there was a very strong message coming out of all the media that I was reading and hearing, that this was something that attacked and had fatal consequences, most often for the old, not the young. And I was very aware during that time that there was a lot of ageism around this virus. And there was almost a sense in which, oh, come on, guys, you know, if you're young, you're going to be fine. It's not going to affect you much. What if we, you know, a few old ones kick the bucket before their time? Why would we have to worry about that? And I think for a while, you may disagree with me, but that was almost the government's thinking. You know, I think Boris Johnson actually said the words something like, take it on the chin. Well, taking it on the chin for some people meant that you wouldn't survive it because you were in that vulnerable category. I don't think that's the message anymore, although there are still very big overtones of ageism, I think, in a lot of how this virus has been communicated and handled. But we got the message, didn't we? We then got this very clear, very strong message, and we all took it on board. Brilliantly, in my view. Stay home, protect the NHS, stay safe. And I was very happy to pull my front door closed and, live behind it, limiting very severely how much I went out into the world, because I really did understand that in doing that, I was doing something extremely positive, and I was protecting my own, possibly saving my own life, and I was protecting the NHS and possibly saving other people's lives. And now we've been in lockdown, and lockdown to a certain extent, with that clear messaging, has been relatively straightforward. I'm not going to say it's been easy. It's been easier for some than others. However, it has been relatively straightforward. You don't do this, you don't do this, you can do that, and you can do that, but it's very limited. So I know where I stand. And I think within that, there's a degree of security, and within that, there's a degree of compliance that I'm prepared to give, because it totally makes sense to me. It feels to me like we're now moving towards, and will ultimately move to, a situation where the lockdown is no longer so complete. There'll be an easing of it, certain categories, in certain dimensions, in certain ways, certain people. And then there are going to be complications for us to weigh up, and things for us to consider that we aren't having to consider at the moment. And I think therein lies some of the fear, some of the feelings that people have at the moment. This was on that, in the responses to Helen on Facebook. I feel angry and afraid. I'm increasingly sad, and I feel negative and burdened. So those feelings are going to come to the surface because we're moving from almost certainty to a very uncertain stage. And that's going to be quite difficult for us, I think, in lots of ways. There were some other things that came up on that Facebook post which were very, very interesting. And I want to pick up on a couple of them, because I do think that they're worth considering. One is to do with the shielding message around older people and you're too old to treat. And another one was the messages, we can sacrifice the older generation. And I agree with that. I think that over the last 6 weeks, and particularly some of the information that's come to the fore about residential care homes and the lack of care and consideration that has been given to those people staffing those places, going into those places, and also those residents in those places, they have to a certain extent been ignored, overlooked. And I think the word sacrifice is not too strong a word to use, in that those people were never given the opportunity to go to hospital and get treatment, which in itself is well, it begs the question, the degree to which we value those lives in the way that I feel they need to be valued. I want to come to that a bit later on. The second thing that came out quite strongly in that on that Facebook conversation that was going on was, how many active years do I have left? 18 months is a lifetime. If I'm told to stay in for another 18 months, that's a lifetime for 77-year-olds. So there was a preoccupation within that, hang on a moment, I'm wasting my life and I haven't got much life left. If you keep taking my freedom away from me when I'm so much at the end of my life, then that's a huge thing for me to have to pay, a huge debt that I have to pay, and I can't get that time back. I'm going to die before I can have that time again. I kind of don't agree with that. I don't agree with it because I think at 77 you've got possibly a very good chance of another 10 years, probably 15 years if you're a reasonably fit and active older woman. And 18 months compared to 15 years more of quite good and active life, I think is a very small price to pay. But I'm only 72. Maybe if I was 77, I'd feel differently. I'm not sure. Another one, which I thought it's almost the opposite of that. So I want to have my longed for retirement. I don't want to die now because it will deprive me of that retirement. So I will accept whatever it takes. And that's like the opposite view. Okay, I don't like this. I don't like the loss of my freedom, but I will accept it because I really want to have my retirement. And that's kind of how I feel, you know. I desperately want to live on into my old age. I really do. I want to see my grandchildren grow up. I want to have more of this life. And if by staying home right now and not taking too many risks, I actually have that longer life, then I think that's a very small price to pay. It's my personal opinion. And the last thing, as again, picking up on the conversation, an end date would make it more tolerable. That's the craving for certainty that we all have. Now, the problem with this particular situation we're in, there is no end date. There is absolutely no end date. It will never come. There is the possibility that ultimately we will all be protected from the virus because we will all be vaccinated. But the fact that this will have an end date is an absolute illusion. I will even say it's a delusion, because we're going to have to live with this in the foreseeable future and adjust our lives accordingly. Which brings me to the last bit that I really wanted to say, which was to do with how do we actually manage ourselves and the situation as we start to come out of lockdown. What are the kind of considerations that I feel very strongly that we need to have? So these are my ideas. The first is that we're all going to have to get a lot better at informing ourselves about the potential risk to us as individuals of doing some of the things that we might decide to do. And that might be visiting our families, it might be going out to a book club or something like that. So how will we make these risk assessments? Well, the first thing is to ask, where do you live? This virus is not evenly spread throughout our country. It's very, very much concentrated in the urban conurbations. So you need to think about where you live. You also need to think about where the virus is at its most active and virulent, if you like, at the moment. It's been in London, it's now going up to the northeast. It will travel around. As it travels around, the risk to you will change. As it declines in one area, your risk will go down, but it might be going up in another area, which might put you at more risk if you're in that area. The next thing that you'll have to assess in terms of risk is your own health in relationship to what that virus might do to you. Now, we know that the virus has very sadly taken the lives of fit, much younger people. But if you look at the statistics, it shows that it is much more likely that you will lose your life if you have some underlying other health problem, and it's becoming apparent what they are. There are also other statistics that you need to be aware of. It's more likely to kill you if you're a man, it's more likely to kill you if you come from a certain socioeconomic group, and it looks as though Black, Asian and minority groups are more vulnerable to it than others, which may be caused by a number of different factors. So again, at-risk groups, your own health, and so on and so forth have to become considerations. You then have to choose what it is that you want to do and what is likely to be most risky. I personally very much doubt if I will go on the London Underground in the near future or medium term. I just don't think I'm going to do that. And I know why, because I'm going to come in contact in enclosed spaces with a lot of younger people and surfaces that are likely to be contaminated. So I shall avoid that. But popping round to see my daughter or daughters and their families when they have not been out and about and likely to have been in contact with the virus is something that I might take the risk to do, possibly wearing a mask and making sure that I wash my hands very thoroughly when I get home if I've touched surfaces in their houses. Now, these are all the things that I think we need to think about. The other thing that I think quite strongly is that the science over the next 6 months is going to change things quite dramatically. So in the next 6 months, we're not going to be in the same place as we are now. The science is moving forward quickly in terms of palliatives, i.e. medicines that make a difference to people who've got the virus badly, contact tracing, testing. There will be, within the next 6 months, if the government gets its act in gear as it needs to, there is going to be the very real possibility that we'll be told to stay at home if we've been in contact with somebody who's had the disease, and therefore that will protect people like you and I, or we'll be, being protected anyway. So those things are going to make a really big difference within the next 6 months. I'm absolutely convinced of that. And ultimately, there will be a vaccine. That might not be available perhaps for mass use for the next, 6-9 months. But it's on its way. It is being developed. And there is an enormous amount of cooperation in the scientific community that's helping that to happen. So my final bit really around this is that there will be no return to normal. I think we have to adjust to that and not get sad and despondent and upset about it. We just have to say, in the foreseeable future, we are going to have to make our own judgment calls, our own risk assessments, and our own very sensible choices about what will make our own lives more tolerable, more bearable, and that will help us to feel a degree of control that we don't currently have. And I just think that that is a very positive way to look at it and potential way forward. It certainly doesn't fill me with too much despair, let's put it that way. And I just want to finish with something that I read. It was in HuffPost, and it's an article that somebody called Varda Yoren wrote. She's 90 years old. She's obviously the most incredible woman, had an amazing, amazing life. And it's to do with this whole idea of, they're just old people. It doesn't matter if they die. I passionately don't believe that. And I don't think we should see our older age groups as what she says here. I am not disposable. We shouldn't see them as disposable. This is what she wrote. I'm not disposable. And I'm saddened that there are people who think age dictates whether a human life is worth saving. I can tell you that I and my loved ones want me to live for many years to come. I want to attend my grandson's high school graduation and see which college he'll attend. I want to see my older grandson, who is married, become a father. I want to continue my joyful life. I am unable to travel as extensively as I once did, but I want to visit Israel again. Just because I'm 90 doesn't mean I don't have things to learn and skills to hone. I'm not disposable, and I'm saddened that there are people who think age dictates whether a human life is worth saving. So, your life, my life, all our lives are absolutely worth saving, and we have to decide the degree to which we are going to save our own lives in the future, at least as long as this virus runs its course. So I hope you enjoyed that. Come back tomorrow. I'll be here waiting, and I shall very much look forward to seeing you. So see you then. Bye-bye.